Well, we made some interventions during the both the Women's Forum, the Youth Forum, and particularly here in this hotel, the People's Forum. But we thought it was worth holding a meeting for those who are still around to explain a bit more about who we are and where we've come from and what we're trying to do. The idea of the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum came from a Ugandan Member of Parliament, James Mwanda, who was the first chair, and we had discussions at CHOGM 2007 to set it up. We managed to get money from the Foreign Commonwealth Office and DFID, but it's separate at that time, now all merged in the UK, to bring delegates to London the following year, and we adopted a constitution in 2008, set up an executive committee, and as I said, I was the treasurer and UK link, and we did various activities, but for reasons beyond my knowledge, the Commonwealth would not accredit us at that time, and although we did activities and came to various events around the world, we didn't have the accreditation as a civil society organisation, even though we had something like 27 countries in membership, their national disability forum or councils, and we then ran into some hard luck times. After about 2013, we had a presence at the UN and elsewhere, but with that stopped. There was a meeting held by International Disability Alliance and the British government in 2018, July 2018, in London, and a lot of people who'd been involved with the Commonwealth Forum, Disabled People's Forum, came to that, and they saw me and they said, "Richard, come on, we must start this again." And the previous General Secretary had died the previous year, and he was a barrier to the thing going forward, Javid Abidi from India. So there was a fresh start, and I'd helped the British government to get that global summit running smoothly, partly because they'd not consulted any disabled people in the UK about it, and they were about to picket it out of existence. And so I did a deal with them that if we could have 4 speakers at that, then there would only be a token picket at lunchtime. I think they grabbed at that chance because they didn't want the bad publicity, but it meant that they owed me something. And so I said, well, people have been asking me to start the foundation, Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum again. So they came forward eventually with some money, and we met in New York at the Conference of State Parties in June 2019. We had a day conference, courtesy of the Ford Foundation. They gave us a free venue, and the Disability Rights Fund funded us to bring delegates from 35 countries to New York, and we formally restarted the forum then, amended the constitution and developed a work plan and elected an executive, and also held an official side meeting at the UN. So, and we're quite busy, and we held a reception which a number of ministers came to. So that put us back on the map, and we met virtually, the executive committee, but we felt we needed to actually get to know each other. So we had a face-to-face in Malta. Just before the pandemic started, we did work with the Maltese coalition and met the government, as well as sorting out our policies. And by the June of that year, we had 6 policy documents that we developed. But of course, everything changed then, like it did with everybody, and the plans that we had didn't come to fruition. We were going to come to CHOGM the following year and run training, a week of training for disabled people beforehand. It didn't happen in 2020. In fact, it's only happening now. We thought we shouldn't wait for that, so we had been using the internet to have virtual conferences of disabled people's organisations around the world on the impact of COVID, and to develop a strong policy, because as you'll hear later on from my colleague Sruti, there were very significant problems for disabled people around the world caused by the pandemic, not least the highest fatality rates, but also many other issues. And we proved that we could have online conferences with people in many South countries. And yes, there was some intermittentness about it, because of connectivity, but it did work. So we thought then, we can't wait for CHOGM to come, so we will organise and run a training course online, and we opened it up to all our member organisations, and in the end we had 521 people signed up to take part in this virtual course. It was quite, we thought CHOGM would take place that summer in 2001, so we wanted to have got through it by then. Of course that didn't happen either. But we'd set ourselves a very tight time scale, so we had 14 modules delivered each week, 1 per week, with 1 week for a break, and the modules consisted of a written book, course book with activities, a lecture with film insets from different members on the committee and also other films, and 2 90-minute seminars, virtual seminars, one running in the London time morning and one in the evening, so we could actually cover most people in the Commonwealth. Now, not all those 521 stayed with it, as you would expect. They didn't have to pay a fee, they just joined. But more than half did, and nearly 100 did the accreditation, which meant putting in a lot of activities. We recognised that level of internet connectivity didn't exist in many parts of the Commonwealth, so we produced this course again on a flash drive, and so all of it is here, and I've been distributing it to colleagues from different countries to take back. So Sruti's taken over 100 back to India to distribute all around India, and we're hoping that this course will, like a pebble hitting the pond, the ripples will go out further and further. So I have a few with me if there are people who think they could really make use of it, and once you've downloaded it onto your computer, you can then pass it on to the next person and they can download it. But it covers things like what is disability, the different models of disability, health, choice, and the rights to make our own decisions, Article 12 and so on. I should say our key purpose of the Convention now is to see the implementation of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And now it's 14 years since that was ratified by the UN. And we can say that all but 2 Commonwealth countries have actually ratified it. What we can't say is that most Commonwealth countries have implemented it, because they haven't. And this is the real problem. It is no good going to the UN and signing conventions and then not doing anything about it. It doesn't mean anything, and I give notice here that our key purpose is to hold all those governments in the Commonwealth to account, to make sure that they actually do implement it, and that they work with disabled people's organisations, the representative voice of disabled people, human rights organisations, and themselves, the 3 pivotal points which are in Article 33 for implementation. And something has to happen, because of the 52 countries that have ratified means not that you've signed it, they've all signed it, but 52 have ratified, it means that you will put it into practice in your country, and for most, on the British model of legal system, it doesn't mean that just signing, it means it's put into practice. You have to then pass acts through your parliament to make it real, and then you've got to implement those acts. Only 25 of the 52 countries who have ratified have actually passed legislation to make it real. And what I mean by making it real is that an ordinary disabled person who is, for no good reason, not allowed to be employed at the job that they've gone up for, i.e. is discriminated against on grounds of disability, should have recourse to law to challenge that employer. That's what implementation means. Or if a provider, a landlord or a municipal housing association refuses to make adaptations to their building so that they can live there independently, there should be a recourse to law to force those people who own the property to make the changes. Or if they don't make the changes, to allow the person to make the changes, it's not clear that they have to fund it. but they have to allow it. Or in terms of emergencies, and this came up several times during the discussions yesterday and the day before, and we have increasing numbers of emergency situations, that they have a disability-proof evacuation plans for all scenarios, and that those need to be known and practiced. That individuals should have the right to recourse to the UN committee that sits in Geneva, and this means signing the protocol, the additional protocol, which gives individual citizens in the country the right to take a case when they've exhausted the legal proceedings in their own country to the UN committee to make a ruling on it. So this is actually quite important stuff. It's about the bread and butter of disabled people's lives. It's about making our lives equal with other people. Now, there are several things that get in the way of that. One is the inherited infrastructure, which has been designed by and large as if we don't exist. And of course, it's much more expensive to adapt it after you've built the infrastructure than to plan it from the beginning. So this is a new build hotel, and we've had a lot of problems here. The fact that there's only 2 lifts doesn't allow circulation properly, because you've got people who work in the hotel using the lifts at key times when we want to move people up and down. There should be, for a hotel this size, as international standard is 6 lifts, 3 service and 3 passenger guests. There are lots of the accessible rooms. You can't get a wheelchair into the toilets or the bathroom. So those are just a couple of things. And there needs to be, in every country, a system of actually checking new build and adaptations of build to make sure that they comply with international access standards. And if they don't, they shouldn't be given a certificate to function. It's those sorts of things that have to happen in all the countries that have ratified. In schools, we need to make sure that every child has education. Every child. And I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that only 1% of disabled girls go to school in Rwanda. I'm not sure if that's true, but it's a fact that someone from Rwanda has told me. If that is the case, or even if it's 10 or 15 or 20 or 50%, that is an international disgrace. All children need to go to school. It has to be mandatory. And those are just a few things. The last thing I'll say, the barriers from design, but they're also the barriers in people's heads. And Article 8 requires governments to actually change and challenge the thinking of disability of all the citizens who live in their country. That means booking time on network television, other places, to actually challenge old ideas about disability, which are rife in many, many cultures around the world, particularly, but not exclusively in Africa, but also in Asia. These ideas are a real barrier to disabled people moving forward and having equal progress. And so we are setting about challenging all of those things, and we need your help. We need the help of allies. We need the help of disabled people who are not yet aligned to organisations which are aligned to the Convention and to us as a forum. And we need help also to get, my last point, to get the Commonwealth to actually operate in the same way that now the United Nations does, where it has actually a protocol based on disability rights, so no event is run by the UN which isn't disability friendly. That, I'm afraid, is not yet the case in the Commonwealth, and we have to get it to be that way. So we have a big task to do, but we're very pleased to share what we're doing with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can give a clap to the chapter. And that is generally about the Commonwealth Disabled People Forum and where it has come from. We have representation from